Before we start the show, we just want to let you know we're a part of Bard Rock Network, sponsored by Dragon Master Games. Dragon Master Games is a local game store with an online storefront where you can get TTRPG products and collectibles, including trading cards. Just go to their website in the show notes and write in the comments, Bard Rock Network sent you. You can also support the network by subscribing to our Patreon or Ko-fi to access network-wide bonus content, get shoutouts on network shows, receive network swag, and get invited to our several annual community game nights. Anyway, on with the show. Welcome to College of Whispers, the actual play book club. I'm your host, Marty, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Vicky. Say hello.
Hello.
And today we have a special guest, a good friend of mine, Collin Hop of Wayfaring Strangers. Say hello, Collin.
Hello, hi.
As I just said, today's episode we'll be talking about Wayfaring Strangers, an actual play podcast put on by members of prog rock group Winter Wayfarer. Vicky, do you want to go into the fun details? You have good notes?
Wow. I was hoping you'd be able to tell me all about this.
Nah, I'm putting you on the spot. Here we go.
No.
Okay, that is fine.
I will let you go.
So, Wayfaring Strangers first premiered in March of 2021. It stars myself, Marty Ballmer, as Gluzo, Collin Hop as Rory, Jake Garrett as Zario Naharis, Eldon Warner as Sprout and Hugh William Foster, and Ryan Vandevet as the DM. Currently, Wayfaring Strangers has released 10 episodes of a full campaign and a 2-part miniseries called The Crystalline Cavern, with more on the way.
Yeah, you still don't know Rory's last name.
Did I say it? I hope I didn't say it.
You didn't say it, and
Okay.
I'm glad you didn't.
Okay,
No,
it's
I was
still
waiting for
it's
it.
in my notes somewhere because it's on your character sheet and I've seen it, but
It's a secret.
Nobody in the game has even asked.
that's true. Gluzo also has a last name that we have never talked about.
That's fair.
Fun.
That's
hey,
fair. We just
we're
know
just inside scoop right off the bat. How do you like
Straight
that?
off. Straight in with the secrets.
So yeah, I guess we can get into just kind of how we started the show, just as a whole. It was March of 2020, so
Yeah.
prime COVID time, and the 5 of us at the time were stuck at home, not doing anything, and I said, hey, I want to teach you guys how to play D&D. So we actually had started, I had DM'd a home game for, I want to say like 4 sessions, and I said, I'm not having fun DMing. I'm not a DM.
Okay.
So Ryan actually took over DMing, and we decided that we wanted to record this, and now here we are with a full podcast.
Yeah, the fun thing about that was how, I mean, Jake as well, but me and Jake were both very new to D&D, and actually, if I could even back you up just a little further, we in 2019, I would imagine, I think it was fall, we played a show over up in Mankato, Minnesota. So that was actually like mine and Jake's first glimpse into actually playing any D&D. We kind of just did like a little, I guess it was realistically, it was you starting that campaign or whatever that you started DMing. That was the beginning of that.
I had found a one-shot on Google, and we were in an RV going down the highway on the way home from Mankato, Minnesota.
Wow.
And we sat down and we played D&D for the first time in an RV going down the road.
Yeah, mobile D&D.
That's amazing.
If we had more of a budget, we could make that another series. It's just us playing D&D while moving.
While we're in a moving vehicle. That's good audio. That
it's
all
just
that road
for
noise.
marketing, though. That's all it's about.
It's a good USP, to be fair. It's a good idea.
But
We
yeah,
have roads in the States.
I
so
had
we use
originally
them.
like thought, because I had the idea of like getting the guys to play D&D, like because I joined Winter Wayfarer in April of 2019, and I had kind of broached the subject of D&D a couple of times, and I wasn't like, I guess, asking seriously at the time until like it was either Collin or Jake was like, "Are we gonna do that?" And I was like, "Oh, you guys
And
actually you wanted to do that."
I can't remember if I even knew that, like, because I'd known Ryan. Me and Ryan have known each other for a really long time. Marty and I and Jake are all in the same graduating class. Ryan's a couple years younger than us, but I've known Ryan my whole life. Both of our dads were in law enforcement. I mean, my dad's retired now, but like we knew each other that way in the same town. And I don't even know if I knew that he played D&D for as long as he has. And then kind of a side subject jump. So Eldon joined the band later than Marty. Another kind of funny small world story about how he kind of came around and how we know him. But that is not important to what I'm about to say. But just so happens, too, that Eldon is a freak of D&D and is wonderful at that. So it worked out that he joined, too, and the timing is perfect.
Eldon was also like the person that got me into D&D because we went to college together, and we were at lunch one day, and he was like telling me, he was like, "Oh, I've got D&D tonight," and I was like, "You play D&D?" Because this was like in my period of like nerd status where I was like, all right, I'm a nerd because X, Y, and Z, but I'm never gonna like play D&D or do all that other crazy stuff. And then Eldon was like, yeah, I'm playing, and I've got this group of guys from like the track team or whatever, and we play, and it's a blast. And I was like,
Track team.
yeah,
Track team D&D.
yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, he invited me to his house like on the night that they were doing their final session of a campaign, and I was sitting there watching them, and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And they would do like a campaign basically per semester while we were at university.
Yeah.
And so like for the next semester they invited me to play, and it's been a wrap from then on. I've been hooked.
I feel like I need to explain how and why I got into D&D. I mean, the how is obvious because we're in a band together, and that was, you explained that you brought that to us, Marty, but I think the thing that really intrigued me about getting into D&D, because I played video games from when I was literally a year old on a computer, and then I kind of fell off of the whole video game thing when I was like a senior in high school around 2013, 2014. I sold an Xbox so I could do more music. And so I still have some ways to play video games, but I just never do. So that's like the gaming side of me, or about as I guess if we want to use the buzzword nerd, that's about as nerdy as I really got, was just playing video games. From there, it was really just like I've always been into art, like fine arts and stuff was more of my upbringing artistically, which moved to music. And I think the thing that intrigued me the most about D&D and why I even felt like almost a need to explore that was just the idea of role-playing, as a blanket term. Just the role-playing side of it was like, okay, well, I can act. Like, I've never really had I've never pushed myself to like do anything with acting necessarily. There's been some tiny couple little things where I actually technically have, I suppose, but it was more of a live setting. But outside of that, it's really the role playing side of it. So like the mechanics, I still suck at the mechanics, and I'm trying to learn more of that because I like the world building and the role playing side of it, and just creating and that kind of thing. So I am working on like my own sort of universe and all that stuff if I ever do get around to DMing. And it's
Okay.
Marty knows how stupid weird I am about building things out. So
Yeah,
Amazing.
he's
I like the lore and all that. So
Best bit.
but yeah, it's the creative element for me. It's like
Yeah.
I don't play board games. Like I generally speaking, that kind of stuff kind of turns me off because I'm just like, the meme of the cat with the synth in the background and he's spacing off. That's me. Like when people explain anything, even in D&D, when people explain like how something works, I'm just like, I heard every single word you said and I just forgot all of it.
No.
So that's me. But it's the creativity in it that really attracts me.
That's awesome. That's brilliant. Hearing that I was going to say that I'm just going off on a small tangent, but there are different players that you see, player archetypes in D&D, and the best one to always get is the one that really loves the lore, the creative ones, because they'll come up with some amazing stuff. The ones who are like all into the sort of ones that I call the gamer, the ones that are into the min-maxing and the numbers. It's the other ones. It's the ones who never quite grasp how everything works, but they know the lore, they know the world building. Those are the ones that I love, and I love playing with those guys.
there's a lot of like stuff that got kind of cut on the cutting room floor of trying to remind Collin which one's the D8 and which one's the D6.
Yeah,
Even
I don't look at
in,
them
like,
enough.
Some of our more recent stuff, and it's like no. Actually, funny story that just happened the night before this recording session.
Oh yeah,
we're making characters for just like a home game that we're gonna play just to keep.
I do have an explanation for it too when we get to it.
So we're making characters for just a home game that we're not even gonna record. We're just gonna to like get back into the swing
Back
of
into
things
it,
because
yeah.
it's been a while. But Collin was rolling for stats, and I left to go to the bathroom, and I came back and I looked at the stat spread that Collin had, and I think he had 2 stats that were above 10,
Okay.
and they were 11.
Okay.
And I was like,
It
"This
can
is
work.
really bad. This is a really bad stat spread. I think you should maybe
No,
roll it
it's
again."
fine. No,
Because there were like some 6s. There was
they're
like
the
a couple
best
4s.
characters.
Yes and no. But
I was questioning how.
But, so he grabs his dice and he rolls them again, and I look into the tray and he's rolled 4 d4s, and I go, "No wonder your
Right.
stats are so bad."
So here's
Okay.
where I get to defend my brain.
Yeah.
Was way back, and again, it's like I haven't touched dice in a while anyway. But like way back, it was like my my game mentally for knowing which die was which in the smaller numbers, because like you're always grabbing d20s and stuff. But
Yeah.
when I was looking at the lower numbers, I was like, okay, so the 6 would not be the triangle.
Nope.
My head says that would be a 6. And so, but I just inadvertently subverted that in my head when I rolled. So whatever, that's my defense.
No
I'll roll with
problem.
that.
Hey,
It happens.
and it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I've seen it happen on actual plays. Don't worry. I don't know if there's any help, but I do different colours for players who are new.
Oh, that's
So each
that's
dice is
good.
different colour. So it's like just roll the red one, or just roll the green one. I don't
That's
know
easy.
if that's going to help.
I think I've given you enough
Kindergarten
sets of dice
D&D.
at this time. by this point, I think I've given you enough sets of dice that you could probably do that.
You could teach D&D to kindergartners with that approach.
It's how
You could bring it
There's
into the
actually-
school system with
I
that.
should
it's
show
how
you.
it is taught. Yeah.
There's a Twitter account I need to show you at some point. There's this is a quick shout out to Red Wormling. It's this guy who has this 6-year-old kid who loves playing D&D and is like a DM and like makes just crazy stuff. They've made encounters for Bard Rock Cafe in the past.
Amazing.
And
Wow.
so it's just like you can teach D&D to kids and they will eat
Yeah.
eat that up.
Oh yeah. There's different. I could, especially subject. I could go into hours, but I won't. But there's different phrases that kids have. So, before 6 years old, they're just going to want to fight and kill everything. After 6, they're going to want to interact with people. so you just have to kind of mix it. But I'll. But yeah, back on topic. Sorry.
Yeah, all good. This is the show. It's just we go on tangents, and sometimes we'll talk about the show that we're supposed to talk about.
No,
not even once.
Long story short, I'm a noob,
and that's okay.
We all are.
I'm
we
green.
All were at one point.
Like two-fifths are our table, and now like half of our table technically are pretty much new players. We started recording for Wayfaring Strangers Calamity in March or April of 2020, and then kind of sidelined it for a little while, and then started releasing in March of 2021.
I think to also note, like when we first sought out to record this material for that campaign, the recorded side of that, my whole life being in audio and production and stuff like that, we could have easily at that point found a way to make the production at a higher level. But I think the decision that we made back then was we were tossing around the idea of doing something either like a Patreon or akin to a Patreon for the band, and thinking of some random things like us playing D&D, basically being like a side thing that people could enjoy outside of specific music related material, which the Patreon thing, at least at this point, is still not a thing that we've actually dove into. But yeah, that's we started it with the intention of like, yeah, this is just like a simpler recording that people can grab onto, and we won't have to do as much production with it. And then we're like, well, let's actually make this a podcast. So like the material. Well, I mean, in post-production, we worked with what we could to make it better and compose music and stuff for it and all that. But yeah, like with Crystalline Cavern, which is currently released, like that is more like the current setup that we do. So it's not completely isolated. There's mic bleed and all that stuff, but everybody has a microphone. And there's a lot more that goes into it. So that's kind of like how we got into it and how we decided the production factoring.
Yeah, because when we started, it was we were all on Discord, and our setups kind of ranged from, Collin, who has his professional like audio engineering setup, to Jake, who was recording or who was just on his phone.
Yes, for sure.
There's a moment in like one of the like first half episodes where you can hear Jake leave his house, get into his car, and go to the store and buy something and drive back.
I was gonna ask what happened at that point because I could hear it, but I was like, to be fair, I know the audio quality ranges, but you can hear everybody. You can hear what everybody says, even. Like I said, going into the car and getting something from the store. Which, yeah, I was like, something's going on in the background here. What's going on? I could hear like the ding dong as it went through the door.
Yeah.
That's it's just a funny, like, it doesn't have anything to do with like the game or the podcast at all, but it's just a funny moment that like when I go back and listen, I'm like, that's what's going on.
That's what
it's
it is.
It's great.
But everybody comes through really clearly. You can hear what everybody is saying. Just kind of shows that maybe the mixing or whatever you guys have done and the leveling afterwards has just kind of brought everybody up to the same standard, really.
I think we definitely have kind of a bit of a leg up on other like podcasts or actual plays like in our market, just because we have Collin and his knowledge of like how audio works. So from the gate, even with the limitations that we had, how we were recording and everything, it was very easy to just be like, well, I can kind of tweak it a little bit so it's usable.
Yeah, I think I just tried to mix, like, because I think that whole feed, again, it's been a while, but I think what I did was basically try to just do the best mix that I could in the actual Discord chat, because that was all I could really, like we didn't have anybody else recording themselves. Like if everybody was recording their own, like if Jake had a way to record his phone locally and then bring it all into a session like that, then it would be easy. I mean, it would still sound that same way, but yeah, it was just kind of the magic of, there are audio engineers that work on Discord, and they gate the audio. Right now, I'm actually holding a button down just because I was going to try that out. But yeah, they gate the audio when you're not talking. So, granted, if something's loud enough, like a door ding into the grocery store, that will come through. But yeah, it kind of worked to do it that way. Not the most fascinating and fun things to talk about, but that's my world.
No, I love it. I think it shows that the passion is there and the knowledge is there and the enthusiasm. Just and you're using the techniques and talents that you have to bring something new to the system. Makes sense.
Speaking of talents,
yeah, totally.
Can we talk about some of the music that Collin has written for the show? Because especially in the later half, we don't have a whole lot of like background music in Calamity. It's usually reserved for like intro, mid-roll, ending.
Mm-hmm.
But most of that was composed specifically for like the moment in the episode.
Wow.
And
yeah, Marty wrote some stuff too for
I did
Calamity.
write a couple things.
No
I'm not
way.
much of a songwriter, but I did a couple just tiny little pieces here and there. And Eldon actually wrote like some songs, like the end of the episode where Sprout leaves. That's a song that Eldon wrote and recorded himself.
I did wonder. I was going to ask.
It's a very fun, like our process kind of like when we do stuff like that is I'll come over to the studio, we'll sit down, Collin will just pull up a moment and start plugging away, and every now and then I'll chime in and be like, hey, what if we did like this? Or and in like the span of an hour or two we have like another piece done that we can just plop into the podcast.
Amazing.
So
yeah, it was on my list of questions to ask, which was who does the music.
yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
Team effort.
Lately it's been mostly Collin, but
I know we're talking about Calamity more so, but Crystalline Cavern, again, because that one's out. I'm working on music for other stuff too, D&D wise, which I'm excited about. But Crystalline Cavern, I love what happened musically in that one.
for
so
sure.
if we're talking about music, that one's a fun one for me to plug.
Because that one definitely we were able to add more like in like the actual moments of gameplay rather than like here's a just quick transition thing into like a mid-roll or like here's the end of the episode. It actually comes in while we're in character playing the game. And
yeah, there's occasional moments I try to find the right balance, because if I try to do sound design rather than music, if I'm trying to do some sound design, there's a bit of a decision factor in like, okay, how much of this do I want to actually think up, or how like for example in Calamity at the beginning during Ryan's intro monologue, I can't remember if he gave this guy a name, but it's that man sitting on the dock and he gets pulled out into the water, and I actually like used some sounds, mixed some things in that essentially were like him hitting his head as Ryan stated, and then him falling into the water, and then like in the water it kind of like slowly moves its way off, where like once he hits the water you hear that's panned to like the far right or something. So it's like there are moments like that underneath the music that I think are fun, but again it's not something that you want to do the whole way through, because one, that would just take forever to try to Foley in the footsteps or all that kind of stuff. But I do like some of the sound design in more of like a humorous way too, like in Crystalline Cavern when Eldon's Elephant Man character yells every now and then when he does this certain signature thing that he does in that character. Right. You just hear it echo in a ridiculous way, and so like sometimes it's just fun to like put something stupid in there like that. But
amazing. I'm gonna have to listen to this. It sounds amazing.
It's definitely a taste of things to come, if nothing else, just because it's what we're using for our setup more nowadays. We've gone through like several iterations of like, okay, this is how we're gonna record for the time being, because we started on Discord, and then we moved into the studio, but we were all just sitting in the like control room with a room mic, and then Ryan just has his own microphone, and then the rest of us just shared like a pair of room mics.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just a stereo pair of microphones, and then Ryan had his own specific one. So sometimes it's like you get a weird phasing issue too, but it is kind of interesting because you can kind of hear like it plays a part in discerning who's talking a little bit in that setup, because some people you can kind of hear are not just down the pipe center in the recording. There's a little bit of panning naturally that happens with the stereo thing, but that was an interesting setup. And then if we ever get around to, I don't know if this is spoiling much, but if we get around to finishing the second season of Calamity, I don't know if you plan to talk anything about that at all in this, but that is a tentative thing at this point.
Yeah.
I guess is the safest way to put it. But
we're working on it. We'll see if it actually comes
yeah,
out.
we'll see if it goes somewhere. But yeah, the first episode of that actually was recorded in the old setup. So like the first episode of that season actually has existed before we really started recording the second season again, if it does come out. But
yeah. And now we like just have some folding tables that we put out, and everybody gets their own mic and has a pop filter, and we feel really nice and professional, and it's a good time. It does take us like about an hour or 30 minutes to an hour to set everything up, but it's worth it.
It also is. It takes a while because it's in my live room space in my studio, so
So there's
it's always a
there's
bunch
just
of moving
instruments everywhere. We kind of have to like shove everything into the corners, and
Wow. Get around, set up. Got it. So it's more of a temporary space that you have to keep building up and putting down again.
yeah.
totally.
Amazing.
But outside of production, what did you think about the story of Calamity season 1?
I really enjoyed it. I could tell that everyone had kind of, even though the characters hadn't met each other, I could tell that everybody had met each other before, that you were all friends. There's a lot of like in-jokes and riffing off each other that was going on. And it's quite interesting that there was a point where you rolled very low. I think it was like an investigation check in the room after the bandits fight. I don't remember which episode it was. I didn't note it. I really should have noted it. But there's a lot of low rolls, but everybody kept rolling low. And I think there's a point where the DM was just like, okay, you're gonna have to. You were looking for a key, I think, or something. And I could hear it in everybody's voice going, we're really low, rolling low. But I think you all did the fail forwards. So DM came up with like, okay, you're finding the key because this is what you need to carry on. But you're just finding a little bit of gold. Everybody was finding something very small.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that sort of fail forwards dynamics that you'd all got, because you were all sort of like, oh no, he's rolled low. He's rolled low. And it was just really fun to listen to a group of people who were obviously could have the banter. If that's, I don't know if you guys know what banter is. I don't know if it's made it over there. Okay, cool.
Oh, totally.
You had that camaraderie going on that you could sort of say things to each other that you knew wouldn't be taken seriously.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely like just a very easy like baseline level of trust you can get at a table like ours, just because most of us have known each other since we were kids. We've been doing music together for how many years at this point, and it does translate very easily into a table, because you're just playing a game with your friends, and it's I think a strength of the show that we didn't have to like cast like a group of people to come on the show and like get to know each other over the course of making the show. It's just, hey, we're people that are close to each other, and we like playing this game, and we want to share it with people. I don't know.
You've all got some strange characters. I'm going to say strange characters, but on paper, Sprout wouldn't work as a if somebody came in and said, I want to play a 9-year-old child in a campaign where there's a lot of Jake's character wants to almost sort of get the sword out every opportunity that he has, and yet he took Sprout under his wing immediately, and everybody sort of gathered around Sprout and went, cause I think that just shows how well-rounded and friends that you all are, because you can just
we were definitely we were all about it until we got like 2 combats into the story, and we were like, you haven't attacked anything. You haven't done.
I don't know how that conversation, or if there was one.
Yeah, that's my next question.
Between Ryan and Eldon went with that first character iteration, but
I don't know.
It also makes sense though with Zario, because I mean, Jake is probably the most family man of the group too. Yeah. So that really makes sense when you look at it, if you know him personally.
Right. Yeah, the Sprout dynamic with really, I think everybody in the cast was fun, and I think it didn't overstay its welcome. It ended but it ended before it became like a thing that was going to be like a problem at the table, I think.
Yes, for sure. Yes.
The weasel was the last straw.
Yeah, that was it. That was the weasel.
That weasel in the yeah.
and then we got truly, like, with as little bias as I can muster, my favorite character in an actual play, Hugh William Foster.
Same.
I love Hugh. I think Eldon was born to be an old man. The voice he does, it's perfect. A lot of
mannerisms, everything. Like, there's so much into it that he didn't probably even have to think of.
No, he and like
just
for
lived into
some
it.
of the Calamity Season 2 stuff, just like the way he talks, and with like the upgraded microphone, he can like get in closer and like whisper more often. And you're sitting there and you're like, you're just like a 70-year-old man in a 24-year-old's body. Yeah, he was my favorite.
His vocal range, though, man,
it's crazy.
I mean, so another backstory thing for Eldon as a human being in real life is fantastic opera singer, amongst other things, but he can fling up into really high tenor range, no problem. But then, like, when he's Hugh, like, he's hitting like low D's and just like I'm a baritone, and he sometimes in speech goes easily lower than me, and I don't know how he does it, but it's perfect for Hugh.
The kid's insane. Look for him on like some voice acting stuff in the near future. I really think he'll be a big name one day. Eldon, if you're listening, hi. I'm going to talk you up.
Hey folks, we just want to take a break from the action to let you know how you can support the show. As a part of Bard Rock Network, you can support us through a number of affiliate programs, where a portion of your order goes to support the network. Everyone loves dice, right? Fanroll Dice can make dice of all shapes and sizes, as well as accessories like trays, bags, and towers. Or maybe you want to take better campaign notes. Just check out Minva RPG and look at their assortment of campaign journals and tools. Finally, you can level up your game night with tea or coffee from Many Worlds Tavern. In addition to delicious tea and coffee, they have stickers, tokens for your favorite trading card games, and playmats. Qualifying orders even come with free dice. All of those affiliate links can be found in the show notes, and you just need to use the code BardRockCafe at checkout to save on your order.
Most folks don't realize it, but the world is ripe with monsters. And when you have a monster problem, you need someone who is smart.
I came over here, I saw that there was a crime scene, I figured, I'd park here on the
crime scene.
Brave.
It's just not our fight. We just honk the horn, everybody dissipates, and we just ride away.
And qualified.
If nobody is going to assist David with this, he is going to pull out his nunchucks.
Who gave him those nunchucks?
Van Helmen's family is none of those things, but they're the best we've got, so check them out on Monster Cafe. Available now wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Out of all the parties I've played with, the Calamity Party was like my favorite, and I look back on it fondly every time I go back and listen, or like if we're working on something new. Gluzo is, of course, very near and dear to my heart. One of my favorite D&D characters I've ever made.
Were there any favorite moments with him that you enjoyed?
Favorite moments?
Oh, totally. I will
Go for it.
I gosh, I hope I don't forget kind of how this happens. There was one moment where, I can't remember who it was between. I think it was prior to the light him on fire moment. Not to steal it from you, Marty, because that's probably yours. But prior to that moment, might have to help me on the name of the person that the drow elf that Hugh is going to find.
Wilton.
Yes, Wilton. So upon Wilton entering the room and talking with the party, or Wilton rolled some sort of devious spell or cast something naughty, and Hugh is basically like kind of out of character, but also still sort of in character in the voice, saying something like, this would have been a suicide mission on my own. And then everybody just didn't say anything for like 3 seconds. And then he, then it was like fully realized.
Yeah, he cast.
And I was like, I don't know if that was like an intentional plot point that Ryan set for Hugh to go into the woods to find this elf that was already associated with them, and then unintentionally link up with the rest of who the party is, and then us aid him in that, and him come out unscathed in the end when it was maybe supposed to be the other way around. If Ryan did that, that was just brilliant work, I think. But if not, that was one of the best lived randomized improv things that you could probably find.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that moment until like
the delivery is so funny though.
When we were both going back and listening, and you were like, you have to listen to this again, and I did, and I was like, man, that's actually an underrated moment. Because that whole that episode 7 and 8, like where we meet Hugh and are introduced and go on that little mini adventure, there's so many just amazing things, and you can tell that this character, even though it's kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum from Sprout, but still has the same weird issue of I don't know, we have to be careful of this old man when we're in combat. It's still very apparent that the character just fits in with the party almost immediately. And there's just so much good in especially those 2 episodes.
I think the character introductions in this first season were well done too. Starting out with Ruri, that one makes a lot of sense. Just what's the maybe this is a question you had already, Marty, but what's the overall feeling of this would be essentially our debut as a podcast? How does it, aside from the production and aside from any of the other things we could talk about, if the focus is how does this feel as the first run for us to put out, how does that speak into the podcast itself? And I mean, that's kind of I
think that's actually very worth talking about right now, because we just got done recording the episode where we talked about the dungeon run, and I had gone on record saying that the start of that show was very slow, and it made it a little harder to invest in. And I think we sort of run into a similar issue at the beginning of Calamity, especially in episode 1, just because there is a lot of setup, and it's kind of unavoidable in actual play to have introductions take 30 minutes to an hour. But I think once we actually get at least the 3 people that were in episode 1 together, once that all happens and we just dive into combat, and then episode 2 get the 4th piece of the puzzle, so to speak, in there, it kind of it's we have a good mix of role play to combat, I think. Maybe, I don't know.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it definitely starts out slow, and I think most of that, I can speak for myself easily on this, but a lot of that just attributes to being new to role playing, and we're all, as people that already know each other, we're also jumping into a new form of communication, essentially, with okay, we're acting together now, and how does this look? We're also acting while we're sitting down, and that's a new realm to enter as a group of friends too. But me and Jake being new to D&D and all that, it definitely moves slow at the beginning, but I think that corner is turned pretty quickly, and it definitely improves, like you said, when we get further on in and things fall into place and we start to realize some plot, and we kind of find some agency in our characters.
Yeah, and I think part of it kind of lends to a topic I love to talk about on this show so far is the runtime of an actual play. I'm going to talk about it every episode because I think it's an important thing to measure. Our first couple episodes start off slow, but they're also less than 2 hours long.
Absolutely.
If you have a slow starting campaign that picks up around episode 5 or 6, but each episode is 3 to 4 hours long, that's way more of an investment for something that's going to maybe get better down the road, rather than something that maybe has a shaky start, but it's a very quick transition into the meat of the thing.
I think for me, listening to the first few episodes, I could definitely tell that the first couple of characters were new, but it was from players who were willing to give it a go. You were asking questions, asking how to interact with each other, and it was more of a, how am I fitting myself into this environment, and how is my character here, rather than I'm completely new, I need everything guided to me. And I think it was when Marty's character was introduced when that's when it kicked off, but that was episode 2, I want to say, or end of episode 1.
It was 3/4 of the way through episode 1. I remember sitting and recording that and sitting there for, it was nearly an hour.
Yes.
I was my mic's muted, everybody else is playing, having a good time. I'm just sitting there going, oh, I wonder what's on Twitter, blah blah blah. And then finally I was oh, I get to play.
Yeah, I think it's digestible. I mean, part of me and the way that I am as a musician, if you go out to a show, or if we're playing a show as a band, or really it stretches, this mentality that I have stretches anywhere, coming from me being on staff at a church. The point in doing music, or the point in doing anything like that, is how can we get other people here? How can we get somebody who's not already in the circle already to be part of this, or enjoy this whole thing, or engage with us, or with this material? And runtime is a very easy thing. That is a surface level thing that you can look at. If someone's oh, hey, my friends, or these people that I know have this podcast, and they get on and they look, and the first episodes are maybe akin to more of, something that they might give a shot on Netflix or something like that, then, oh, okay, well, I could sit this through and check it out. But if you jump on and you're maybe completely out of the know and with D&D, and you jump in, you're like, okay, I'll try Critical Role, and it's like, holy smokes, I gotta watch all of. Do I sit here and do I actually watch all of them, or like
Yeah.
do I just listen? Like, how does this work? And then it's that long, like, so I think us essentially looking at our runtime, going into it as like, this is a form of outreach in a way, then I think that's engaging, and that looks better, from a first impression for people. Again, like me being newer to the game and newer to that world, that looks better for someone like me, and I would be much more likely to give this podcast a shot, knowing that the first episode is under an hour long or something like that, hypothetically.
Yeah, definitely. You can spend an hour listening to a podcast. It's a small amount of time. It's a drive. It's a commute. It's something like that. It's not
Totally.
really a time commitment.
Yeah, it was easy for me to. I was traveling down to Texas, and so like my drive back up from Texas to Iowa is around 18 or so hours, and like to have something like that or like if I'm just commuting, I commute a half hour to work in a different city, and to be able to like brush up on some of these episodes again after having not heard them in a long time, like that works for me. Like it's nice to not feel like you barely made it through a quarter of the combat and you're already an hour through something or whatever. So I like the bite-sized version of some of what we have starting out.
Definitely.
I will also say, I've gotten comments from somebody who listened to the show recently. Shout outs to Kenny, the DM for Bard Rock Cafe, who has gone on record saying that this podcast is frustratingly good. He was able to, we don't have that many episodes out there, but he was able to catch up on us in like maybe 2 weeks, just because his commute is an hour and he can listen to a full episode in a day just by going, to work and back. And I think that's a good, balance to hit if somebody can catch up on us quickly.
Definitely.
And not feel like they have like 1,000 hours of content to sift through before they, feel like they're engaged with the community.
Yeah, you've got a quick idea of catching up, and you can kind of figure out within the first hour or so whether it's for you or not.
Mm-hmm.
Did you listen to the respite episode that we did? Or is that something that you didn't get around to?
It's like our kind of talk back thing that we did at the end of season 1. It's just right after episode 10.
Yeah, it's just a wrap up kind of thing where we all sat down and kind of talked over it, which was kind of funny because it was like this, where we're like, yeah, it's been a while since we've done this.
Yes,
And now it's been even longer.
But I was going to ask, I was thinking of that, but I was going to ask how the, it's a small function of the episode, but at the beginning of an episode when we recap stuff, like, is that something worth talking over? Is that like, how's the flow? Or I'm guessing that's a standard thing that people do, but maybe it's not. I'm not fully aware.
I will say the way I did it for what we do, I never want to do that again, because what I did was I would literally take like important like bits that like people would say and cut it out of the episode and put it into like a recap track. That took too much time. It truly just took way too much time.
I was gonna say I like that part.
It was nice. It was just a whole lot of like digging through the older episodes and going, okay, is this important? Okay, no, somebody said something like this a while back.
Yeah.
We might have to revisit how we're doing that, or if there's an easier way to do that.
It felt
But-
almost like a telenovela type,
Right.
taking the little clips, and I was like, I remember this part. I remember this part,
And I did like it because I felt like it kind of gave that effect of like this is a show that you're watching or listening to, and this would be like a previously on,
yeah. You
And
think-
I think for what it was, it fulfills the function. I think I spent too much time on it to justify wanting to do it more. And I think part of the issue was like, especially in like the second or third episode, I think I made the recap truly like almost 2 minutes long, and that's way too long.
I think the one way to kind of bridge the gap, at least with where it, like how you currently would approach that, would just be when we edit stuff. I can set markers and make notes, and depending on who's doing what kind of editing, I think the easiest thing would just be to make note of those things while we actually edit through episodes and just
Yeah.
pull pen and paper out if anything and write timestamps or
Yeah.
something like that. It might be a way to alleviate the headache of it.
But yeah, it was fun. I really, this is where I kind of fell in love with, editing and learning how to do that, because it was a project I was really passionate about, and it landed me a spot guest starring on Bard Rock Cafe, which led about a year and a half later to Wayfaring Strangers joining the Bard Rock Network. So it kind of, it's been a very fun thing to kind of, keep up with as time goes on. And, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just like playing the game.
Yeah, it shows. I also like the in character here's the adverts that happens throughout the small little quiet
those are fun to do. The one that Eldon does as Hugh in like episode 9 or whatever is just because we gave him like the nice mic, and that's the first time you hear like the Eldon doing.
Yeah, I told him to just roll with it. It was just me and him, and yeah, I don't know how his unhinged mind can just do that, but
truly
that's
just
what
says,
it was.
Just says whatever
wonderful.
pops into his. But he lets the intrusive thoughts win on a daily basis, and that's why we love him. But yeah, doing the ad reads are in character was very fun. Our ad spots are actually kind of broken right now because we moved hosts, and we had it set to where like, so our previous hosting service would like put in just random ads for the show in a spot that we designated. Yeah. But now it's like, here's some ads. Welcome back. But we're hopefully going to fix that one day, maybe.
It's on the list.
It's on the list. There's so much on the list.
Those little bits that just kind of show how much care is taken into the show and how much you want to spend in doing it.
And the nice thing is, like, the show, like, doesn't really have, and it hasn't never really required that much of a budget outside of what we were paying for hosting fees before joining the network, because Collin already had access to all the equipment, and we were already, set up to do something like this. And, we had a very clear advantage, like, coming out the gate, because this is what, some of us do for a living. And it just lent itself well to doing a project like this, I feel like.
I think I've gone through all my questions, to be fair.
Wonderful. So, yeah, this is my part where I plead with you, please go listen to Wayfaring Strangers. I promise it'll be worth it. We have more stuff coming. Actually, by the time this episode of this show comes out, we will have another 3-part miniseries of Wayfaring Strangers called The Uncanny Valley available to listen. So be on the lookout for that. If you haven't listened to it yet, go do that. If you have listened to it, tag us on social media and tell us what you thought.
Definitely.
Even if you thought it was terrible. Who knows? We need that engagement.
We need constructive criticism, definitely.
And now, as always, we are at the end of our show, and we will be rolling a d20 to determine the topic of the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the dice in my hands this week, and I am
for it.
rolling now.
Ooh.
I got a 10.
That is
10 is unprepared casters.
nice.
So as we're wrapping up today, I just want to give a quick thank you to Collin for agreeing to take time out of his very busy schedule to come talk about our show again, because it's been a long time since we've recorded and we're just getting back into it. I want to get everybody excited about it again.
That's been wonderful getting back in. Gave me another reason to listen to it recently. I'm just stoked for all the other stuff that's coming out too that we've been working on.
Oh yeah, and we have
stuff.
a lot in the can for the hopefully near future. But until then, we will see you in our next episode where we talk about Arc 1 of Unprepared Casters.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for listening to College of Whispers.
Thank you.
And may your backlog grow ever shorter. Thanks for listening to College of Whispers. Our intro and outro song is Everything by Winter Wayfarer. Check them out on all major streaming platforms. You can find College of Whispers on social media at all the relevant places listed in the show notes. College of Whispers is a Bard Rock Network production. Learn more about the network in the show notes and on social media.
Thank you for checking out our show. As a reminder, we're a part of Bard Rock Network, who you can support by checking out our sponsor, Dragon Master Games. Support a local game store, get yourself some TTRPG essentials, and help the network produce more excellent content. It really makes a difference. Our show and all the other shows on Bard Rock Network wouldn't be possible without the support of people like you on our Patreon and Ko-fi. That's why we like to thank supporters who pledge above a certain tier at the end of network productions. This month's top supporters are Sarah, Queen, Vera Lore, and Paul. Thank you all so much for supporting the network. If you want to get shoutouts and other rewards, pledge on our Patreon or Ko-fi today.